Hi guys, welcome back to RUE MORGUE TV. Andrea Subasati here, RUE MORGUE Executive Editor, and as a gesture of thanks for your viewership and readership over the years, we have a special promotion in our online shop right now. The use of the coupon code KRAMPUS gets you 13% off from now until the end of the year, and that's applicable to anything in our shop, so be sure to take advantage of that. And until next time, happy holidays.
Hi, I'm Monica KUEBLER, a contributing editor of RUE MORGUE and the resident book nerd around here. Every month I take survey of the latest and greatest and not so great releases in horror, both fiction and nonfiction, and put them in the magazine for you so that you know what to pick up at the bookstore. And today I'm going to help you figure out what to put in the stockings of all those little boils and ghouls in your life this Christmas. So the way I've decided to structure this list is that we're going to go from little tykes straight up to high schoolers. But I like to start at the beginning. So let's start at the beginning. And the question I get asked the most as a mom of a 4-year-old, the horror-loving mom of a 4-year-old, is how do I get my kids into monsters? And so for this first couple books that I'm going to recommend to throw in your stocking stuffers, I actually had my daughter Wednesday help me out. These are both books that have been in her life since she was very, very young, and they are still bedtime favorites to this day, and she definitely insisted that I include them here for you today. And the first one being Monsters Sleepover. Much like how it sounds, a bunch of monsters head out to their friend's house for a very raucous sleepover. Like a lot of these monster books for little ones, it's not scary. It's showing monsters as silly fun. And when parents ask me, what's the best way to get my kid into monsters? That's how you do it. Silly fun. You get them at the silly fun, and then you show them the spooky later. Which brings us to book number 2, The Hungry Monsters ABC. Much like Monsters Sleepover, we've got monsters invading a classroom. And they are causing all sorts of trouble in that classroom while learning their ABCs. The book comes complete with an awesome set of flashcards at the back for your soon-to-be readers. And once again, silly monster fun, no big scares, but a perfect gateway drug before you show them the stuff that's gonna creep them out. Okay, let's say your kids already have the monster bug. So next up, we're gonna go into something a little spookier, a little scarier, a little squishier, ickier, squelchier. I'm talking about R.L. Stine's The Little Shop of Monsters, where you go not to pick out a monster, but where a monster picks out you. Once again, the artwork in this is a little bit more mature. It's a little creepier. This isn't the book you start with, but if you've got a monster fan in the house, they're gonna love this one. So the next book on our list, Mary Who Wrote Frankenstein, is the perfect stocking stuffer for all those kids who want to know all about the creative process. Even better if they're already into the spooky stuff, because it's the story of how Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, toned down and prepared for young ears. Before we head off to stocking stuffers for older kids, we're going to take one last stop in picture book land for Frankenstein Makes a Sandwich. It's basically a wonderful introduction to all the classic monsters, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Phantom of the Opera, and then a few newer ones too, like Godzilla and the Yeti and Bigfoot. Once again, this is a book that strays a little closer to silly fun than scary, but it's a great way to show your kids who all those classic creatures are if you're just on the brink of thinking they might be ready to see the actual movies. And now we're into the stuff for the slightly older readers, and the next book on our list is a book that requires no introduction. I'm not even going to sit here and summarize it because it's been a classic since I was a kid. And that book is Bunnicula. It has a whole bunch of sequels, and of course it's, you know, right up there with Sesame Street that counts as a childhood gateway drug into vampires with its vegetable-sucking rabbit. If you have a middle grade reader on your Christmas list that's a little bit more advanced, let's say they're already into those Harry Potter books, they're chomping at the bit to read The Hunger Games, I would like to recommend J.W. Oker's Death and Douglas. Douglas is a 12-year-old boy whose family runs a funeral home, so he spent his whole life around death, but that does not prepare him for when a serial killer comes to his town and sets his sights on him. Not only is it a great rollicking story, it's also a wonderful meditation on life and death and dying, perfectly aged for young readers, and you know what? It actually had some great things to say to us adults as well. Now that we have all the little boys and girls out of the way, we're going to get into some books for older readers, some YA titles. I'm going to put very, very high on this list Scott Westerfeld's Peeps. Peeps is a super cool vampire story. It takes the supernatural out of it and casts vampirism as a parasite, a parasitic infection that is passed through humans like a sexually transmitted disease. The book is very heavily rooted in science. You're going to learn lots of stuff about biology and parasites along the way. It has these really cool interstitials between chapters that gives you real scientific information that actually feeds into the fiction story and advances it. It is one of my all-time favorite vampire books, not just YA, but in general. And any young reader who's a vampire fan should definitely check this out, especially if they're looking for vampires that are more monstrous than sparkly and romantic. For a read that's full of suspense and mystery and doesn't even tell many of its secrets when you get to the end of the book, but is utterly engaging for it, a great choice is Sarah Pinborough's The Death House, which concerns a teenage boy who gets labeled as defective after a genetic test and is sent to the titular death house, where he must await the end of his days. And the story is very much about the lives these teens have in this house and how they face their impending sickness and death and make a society of themselves. My next selection is perfect for those readers who are just on the verge of graduating to Stephen King in adult horror fiction. It doesn't deal in the supernatural. It doesn't deal in vampires or werewolves or any of those other monsters that we often find in kids and YA genre stories. It deals very much in real life horrors. The horrors of abusive families and poverty and just growing up on a farm that is no longer producing. Scowler by Daniel Kraus, the book I'm talking about, is one of the most pitch dark YA novels I have ever read. It is also an incredibly, incredibly powerful and good one. So if you have a young reader in your life who constantly feels like YA is a little bit too soft, a little bit too friendly, doesn't push the boundaries hard enough, is chomping at the bit to start reading those adult books, this is a perfect transitional novel for that reader in your life. And finally, if you're itching to put something under the tree that's actually Christmas themed or Yule themed, I have a fantastic recommendation, and that is Maria Alexander's Bloodline of Yule trilogy, which includes Snowed and Snowbound, with the third book hitting shelves in 2020. Not only is Maria's book feature a fantastic biracial heroine who's a robot builder and an atheist, which is very, very rare in YA, it also is a complete reworking of the Krampus mythology, complete with an evil Santa, Lovecraftian monsters, a good dose of Norse mythology, and even a bit of romance. This is Monica S. Kubler from RUE MORGUE. I hope you've enjoyed this gift guide for young readers, and I hope you have a very scary Merry Holiday. You could do a lot worse than the Bloodline of Yule trilogy and read it. Just read it.